Where do you throw your trash right now? Into a bag, right? Now imagine that bag doesn't exist at all, and never did. Then what? That's exactly where one of the most underrated stories in human history begins, the story of the ordinary garbage bag. I'm serious, it sounds boring, but only until you find out what came before it. Let's start with how people actually lived without any of this. For thousands of years, trash was just thrown out. Straight onto the street, out the window, into the river, into a hole in the backyard. Not because people were savages, that was just the norm. In medieval European cities, there was something like an unwritten rule. Before dumping the contents of your chamber pot out the window, you had to shout, "Watch out!" to the people below. That was considered sufficient courtesy. Watch out and down it goes. London, Paris, any major city of that era, these were places with a very specific smell. Sewage mixed with waste ran through the streets, bones and rotting vegetables and dead animals lay everywhere. Horses, the main form of transport, produced tons of manure every single day in just one city. In New York, in the late 1800s, around 15,000 horses died on the streets every year, and their carcasses just lay there until they decomposed enough to be removed in pieces. That was the picture. Plague, cholera, typhus, all of this was largely a direct consequence of how cities handled their waste. People had very little understanding of the connection between garbage and disease, and those who did understand often had no tools to change anything. Trash was simply part of life, like the weather. Cities started hiring sanitation workers, and the first trash cans appeared. But even when the cans showed up, what were you supposed to put in them? Garbage was just tossed in loose. Then the can had to be washed. It was unpleasant, filthy work, and the smell matched. And that's where we reach the main turning point in this story. Plastic. Plastic entered mass use after the Second World War, and it genuinely changed everything. Production was cheap, the material was light, durable, and waterproof. Industry grabbed it instantly. Kitchens filled up with plastic containers, bags, packaging. For the first time in history, people started routinely using things once and throwing them away. But that's exactly when a new problem appeared. There was more garbage, a lot more. And it was different now, wet, mixed together, smelly. Trash cans were turning into a real nightmare. Garbage collectors hated their jobs even more than before. Housewives hated dealing with the cans. Something had to be invented. And that's when Harry Wayeslick walks onto the scene, a Canadian engineer from Winnipeg. In 1950, he invented the first garbage bag. More precisely, he came up with the idea of using polyethylene bags as liners inside trash cans. The idea was so simple it's hard to understand why nobody thought of it sooner. Put a bag in the can, fill it up, tie it off, throw it away. The can stays clean. The smell stays inside. The garbage collector doesn't have to touch the contents directly. Wayeslick patented the idea and started selling the bags to municipalities. The first buyers were hospitals, and institutions' hygiene was an especially pressing issue there. Then the technology began to spread more widely. But garbage bags didn't become widely known overnight. In the late 1960s, the company Glad, yes, the one you probably know, started selling garbage bags for home use. The marketing was simple to the point of genius. Here's your problem, here's the solution, here's the price. People bought them. The market exploded. And then black bags appeared, and that's its own story. Originally, all bags were white or clear, but hospitals and medical facilities developed a need to conceal the contents for ethical and sanitary reasons. That's how opaque bags came about. Black turned out to be the most practical colour. It hides everything, looks neutral, and doesn't show dirt visually. Simple logic, but that's exactly why today the black bag is practically the universal standard for trash. Now for a few strange facts, because no story about garbage is complete without them. The average person produces about 1 kilogram of trash per day. Multiply that by 8 billion people, and you get a number that's hard to even picture. Every year, the world produces more than 2 billion tons of solid municipal waste. That's roughly as if every person on Earth put 250 kilograms of junk outside their door annually. The largest landfill in the world was in New York, a place called Fresh Kills on Staten Island. At its peak, it was so enormous it was visible from space. It was closed in 2001 and then partly converted into a park, which, honestly, sounds like a decent idea. And then there's the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, an accumulation of plastic in the Pacific Ocean that, by various estimates, is comparable in area to several countries combined. It's not a solid island of bottles, the way it's sometimes portrayed, more like a massive zone with a high concentration of microplastics. But that doesn't make it any less unsettling. And now we've arrived at the environmental side of things. Because the garbage bag isn't just a convenience, it's also a problem. Polyethylene, which most bags are made from, takes hundreds of years to break down. Bags end up in oceans, rivers, forests. Animals eat them. Microplastics are now being found in human blood, in lungs, in the placenta. This isn't a scare story, it's data from research conducted in recent years. Many countries have started banning single-use plastic bags or taxing them. Ireland introduced such a tax in the early 2000s, and bag consumption dropped by 90% within a few years. It actually works, when done right. Alongside that, so-called biodegradable bags appeared. Sounds like the solution to all problems, right? But it's not that simple. Most biodegradable bags actually only break down under specific conditions, high temperature, humidity, and the presence of particular microorganisms. In regular soil or in the ocean, they behave almost the same as ordinary plastic. So when you buy one of these bags with the feeling that you're doing something good, you might just be fooling yourself a little. The technology is developing, and truly compostable materials already exist, but mass adoption is still a long way off. If we're being honest, the garbage bag became a victim of its own success. It solved one problem, hygiene and convenience in handling waste, and created another that we're still dealing with today. That's a pretty common story in human history. We invent something brilliant, roll it out everywhere, and then discover consequences nobody calculated. But what personally surprises me most about this story is how recently all of it happened. The garbage bag as a mass-market product has existed for less than 100 years. Our great-grandmothers lived without it, and now we can't imagine a kitchen, an office, or a street without one. That's how progress works, quietly and very fast. So, next time you tie up a bag of trash, know this. Behind that simple gesture is an entire story of how humanity tried to deal with its own waste. And honestly, we're still figuring it out.